Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of IHP Talks, where we sit down and have some conversations with really cool people doing LGBTQ history, archiving, and community organizing across the U.S. Today, we're super excited to talk about our guest. I'm Megan Sullivan, she, her, hers.
Josh Burford, he, him, his.
And JD, go ahead and introduce yourself.
JD Doyle in Houston, he, him, his, I guess. I don't usually do that type of intro, but I do the JD Doyle archives and its various websites.
So let's start right at the very beginning. Like, what motivated you to get this project started?
That would have to go back to 1999 when I started the radio show. The radio show was called Queer Music Heritage, and I decided that no one was documenting gay and lesbian music, and I could do that. And I got a radio slot on a Queer Voices, which is the radio show here in Houston. At the time, it was a 2-hour show, and they gave me an hour a month. Oh, actually, at first they gave me a half hour, and then after 6 months, I told them I needed more time because a half hour is not enough to tell a history story. So they were glad to do that. And so it broadcast an hour, but within like a year, I started the website because I needed it to be archived. So the history was also saved rather than a one-shot broadcast. On the internet, I realized soon that I had the luxury of doing more than an hour because I could. So I would often do 2-hour shows, 3-hour shows. I did a 10-hour show on gay choruses. I think I did 9 hours on queer punk, 6 hours on hip hop, 6 hours on bear music, BEAR. I would do multi-hour shows if I thought the subject merited it. So you could listen online, but I think most people would listen live on the radio. I think most people would listen online to whatever shows they wanted.
Well, I think I got introduced to you through your music archives first.
I'm sure you did, yeah.
I had a conversation with an archivist in North Carolina about, they were preserving some kind of recording, and he said, oh, well, you should check out JD Doyle's music archives, and he sent me to you. So at the very least, I mean, folks in the archival world are aware of your work. Like, who do you think is listening to, your recordings? Do you know who your audience is?
I never really been able to capture that. I get feedback on the internet, of course, especially through Facebook, but that's only been like the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And the show started in 2000.
Well, I know you and I have corresponded a lot because my obsession is publications. So how did you go from the music part to this, publications archive that you built, which is extensive?
I did the music show for 15 years. And when I decided that I needed to devote my time to my other history areas, that was 2015. Around 2013, I realized I had some history stuff in my own collection that I could put online and make available to people, like photographs of gay pride in 1981, 82. I had some publications I could scan. So I started uploading those to my site. Now, my site at that time was Queer Music Heritage. Mm-hmm. Not logical for what I was really doing with Houston history, but that's where the site was. So after about less than a year, I decided this is not logical. It needed its own site. So around late 2013, I got the Houston LGBT History.org site and started adding to that, and it's been growing rapidly. Also, like a true martyr, that same year I started still another site, Texas Obituary Project, because I realized that history could be captured, and I could do it. Sure, I can do that. I can do lots of stuff. Put it on my plate. Sure. I was actually in a group then called, it was a history group that had members from different areas of Houston, like universities and so forth, just people interested. And I proposed it to them. Here's an idea we could do, because San Francisco had one, the GLBT Historical Society in San Francisco, along with the Bay Area Reporter, started archiving obituaries from Bay Area Reporter, from BAR. So I saw that. I liked what they did. And I realized we had a Texas publication called This Week in Texas, or TWIT, that in 1983 started running obituaries. And so I have access to a lot of those, and got access to more over the next couple of years. Started a website to do that. I set it up differently than they did. Theirs was like a thumbnail retrieval library. You'd click on a name, it would bring up the thumbnail image, but that's all it did. I decided I wanted more information than that, so I set up a page for each person so that I could add text to the page and you could search, and I could add tags for researchers. So I could say tags like Black, violence, if it was a gay bashing, Latino, AIDS, female. So I had a number of tags like that for researchers to be able to use to pull just that data if they wanted to. And of course, you could also pull by year. Since I had a text on the page, I don't think you can do that on the San Francisco one. You got to have text to look for. So you can search for a lot of things. You can ask for AIDS death in 1993 in Dallas, and you'll get data.
Nice.
So I did that and debuted that early 2014, along with the history site. I don't know how I did all that, but it got done.
You know, I'm looking on the obituary website right now, because I hadn't looked at that one. And I like how at the top you have the view a random one, like just a random person. And I think for people, you know, like non-researchers, sometimes it's confusing. Like, I don't know what tag I'm looking for. I don't know what that means. But you've made it so community accessible. People can just go and just look.
That's supposed to be the lure to get you into the site.
I wasn't paid to say that. That was absolutely, that just happened. That was real.
Well, if you don't have a particular name to search for, or it doesn't dawn on you, I want San Antonio deaths, then that'll get you an idea of what's on the site, or the type of data that's on the site. I now have 7,200 obituaries.
Wow.
And damn, people keep dying.
Mm-hmm. They have a bad habit of doing that. So
it's hard. It's hard to keep up with, and I try to spot people on Facebook and get the information. Not everybody has an obituary, but just to get the information, even most basic information. There's a researcher in Dallas that got interested in my project a little over a year ago. She's a medical doctor, a researcher, and she just said, well, I'll do some research for you, and she is damn good at it. Digging into library databases, looking up the newspapers, ancestry data, yearbooks. She'll dig into these sources and get information and send it to me, and then this will either be a new entry or she'll add information that I didn't have. Sometimes the obituary in This Week in Texas was not much information. It would give probably the date of death. It might tell the age, it might not. It might not even tell the city. And since this was a statewide publication, I wouldn't know what city it was necessarily.
Right.
So sometimes I would put in my text on the page, what city, ? What age? And of course, anybody can look up those words, find out which entries I need data for. And so she went to town and she's found me hundreds of editions of information. And she's great at tying people together. Oh, and this is so-and-so's lover who also died. Here's his obituary. And I can link to that. So
this is a real community-driven project then. I mean, if you're not just providing this for the community, but the community has options of assisting.
I hope they do, but they don't very much.
We might be able to change that for you a little bit.
Of course, the front page asks for submissions on Facebook from time to time. I'll ask for help on an obituary, and I'll just outright to the person. So-and-so died, and I figure out who's the most likely person to ask. Do you have an obituary for this guy? What can you tell me? Sometimes I get an answer, sometimes I never do. I don't know why. He was your lover, send me the information. No, but oh well.
Now, on the publication side of your website, you've got a lot. I mean, the majority of your material is Texas focused because that's where you are and that's what you're doing. And you've got, I mean, your assorted section has a ton of cool stuff, but do you have a wish list of your own of materials that you would like to locate, that you would love to have on your website? Because I know I've asked you for things that I was looking for that you were able to locate, and we've shared stuff between us, but I mean, do you have a big working list of like your sort of dream collections that you'd love to have on your site?
A project I'm working on right now, which again is probably not logical for the name of the website, because it's not Texas. I got interested in the tabloids of the 50s and 60s and the homophobic, stereotypical articles they would have. Like, in fact, my latest edition, if you can read that, Lowdown was similar to the publication Confidential. On the front, you can say they want the governor of Michigan to pardon Johnny Ray.
Huh.
Megan, you're too young. Johnny Ray was a really famous singer in the early 50s. And he got caught in a bathroom then, before he was famous. But of course, that was brought up later when he became famous. So they wanted the governor to pardon that conviction. I don't think he ever did. But so I'm collecting those articles because they have a snapshot of our culture and how we were viewed by society at that time. So I have maybe 100 articles so far from maybe 15 different publications. And you can search for those. It's under the title Tabloids. You can search by magazine and just go through each magazine in date order and look at how we were covered. You'll find Christine Jorgensen there. She was very popular at that time.
Yeah.
Just lots of people and lots of very homophobic assertions.
Right. Well, I mean, I know this is a weird question, but we get asked this question a lot of times about the kind of materials that we're collecting. But what do you hope people can take away from this diversity of material that you've taken this like intricate time to digitize? Like, what do you want people to be able to walk away from any of your sites?
Without getting specific, I try to be a resource. Like on the music site, you can look for genres. You can learn about what women's artists were making music in the 70s and in the 80s and in the 90s. So you can draw your own conclusions on the type of music. How quote unquote gay lyrics changed over the decades. Like in the beginning, it was mostly lesbian music around 72, 73, mostly the Olivia record label. They did a lot of music with Holly Near and Meg Christian and Chris Williamson and Margie Adams. They were the biggies. And the lyrics back then were more coming out lyrics. because that's what people were doing and what people, I guess, were interested in talking about. That evolved to the, you would hear more later about relationships. You'd hear about protest songs like They're Trying to Take My Children.
Oh, wow.
So the culture changes were reflected in the music over time. And I did a whole 3 or 4 hours on lesbian comedy. So you can dig into that. I love lesbian music. I have probably one of the most extensive collections, certainly for a man, probably for anybody. And I'm considered an expert in that area.
That's really cool. You know, I don't know that we necessarily understood like the reach that we might have doing Invisible Histories here in Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. But I mean, your name comes up so often when we're talking to other queer historians and archivists, not just because of your material, but I mean, like Megan just said, like looking at your site, seeing that it can be used by researchers, but you do not have to be an academic to use your site. And I think that's a really important piece of public history, is that people, like actual day-to-day people, should have access to their history. And I often don't think they do.
I will very quickly say that I am not an academic. I am not a librarian. I probably have no business doing what I do, but I could do it, and I wanted the information out there. I thought it important that our history be online, not just in a box in an archive.
Right.
We have a local archive. Should I use the word hoarding? No, I'm not going to use. I'm not going to
With
use
us,
that
you
word.
can use hoarding. Absolutely.
I'm not going to use that word. I don't believe in that. When I get something off of eBay, some rare program from the Jewel Box Review from 1965, I'll put it on my site the same day, probably. I don't believe in just keeping it to myself. I want it out there. Now, I might put my watermark on it because people do steal stuff without asking me. So they're going to see JD Doyle collection on there for the really rare stuff. But
well, I think that, I mean, this is exactly why we do what we do. Megan and I say this all the time. We have to start making the distinction between archiving and hoarding, and that having something is not enough. Like even having it preserved is not enough. If no one ever sees it, then you're wasting your own storage space and maybe denying someone access to something that might be really influential to their identity or their work. I mean, their family.
Someone on Facebook yesterday was talking about the publication called Gay, which is a New York newspaper. And somebody said, well, it's all available at the New York Public Library. Thank you very little. Even before the virus, I don't jaunt to New York to do research.
Right.
Or I don't go to Smith College to dig into their women's music records. You know, I find stuff doing Google searches. Oh, this is available in Chicago or Manitoba, or thank you. So why doesn't the New York Public Library scan this stuff and put it online?
I mean, I think, you know, you said that you're not sure that you should be doing this work, but I actually think you're the perfect person to be doing this work, because we need more disruptions to the establishment if we're ever going to get this material in the hands of people who could actually use it. And I say that as someone who did train as an archivist, but the institutions are so rigid, you're right, that it's hard to pry stuff out of them.
And also, they have rules. Rules? What would I do with rules?
I'm assuming chuck them out the window?
There's a publication called One, the Homosexual Viewpoint that began in 1953, associated with the One Institute in LA. They have some of those digitized online. They are not done in a user-friendly way at all, why not? I happen to have that same collection. Now, I show the covers of them on my site. Here were the covers of one. I would like to put the digital files up there also, but I've been afraid because it's not my property. And
Right.
It's the property of an institution that still is alive. So I've been hesitating to do it. I've got it all digitized. If somebody wants the July 61 issue of that, I can send it to you. I just don't want to put it up on my website.
Well, that's funny. Like the idea of someone calling you and asking for the July 63 issue was exactly how the one magazine got sent around the country anyway. I mean, it was definitely, call Steve, he's got the September issue, and then he would send it to Wisconsin or Vermont or Alabama. Because to your point, like not every gay person was in LA in the 50s reading one magazine.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think we were talking about this yesterday a little bit. The digitization is a great way to get people excited and looking for their own, like what's in their own home. Because I'm listening, because we have copies of Gay in Birmingham that we got in other donations. We've got stuff from Texas. We've got stuff from overseas. People amass these personal collections, and they should be available. And they really should. People should see.
I'm doing what I can.
Right. Yeah. I think we're trying to do the same thing here, if we can. Digitization is a tough business, though.
It is. I'm blessed that I've had a 501 for 4 or 5 years now, and the 501 gets a couple grants. They've been lucky. We have been lucky, and I got a brand new scanner, which is big scanner. I can scan a whole page of Gay, for example, which was a large newspaper.
Yeah.
I can scan it in one pass, which is wonderful.
That is wonderful.
So I can do more mass scanning. It's way above an office scanner.
Mm-hmm.
It's pricey, and that's okay. My board's officers decided, you need to do this. We can afford it. Just do it. Because I was just using an office scanner before, and I would do two passes at a page of a newspaper, which, okay, it's there, not very pretty, but that's what I could do then.
Right. Well, so I guess sort of my last question for you is, if people have publications they think you might want or need, how would they get in touch with you so that they could do that?
Email, Facebook.
And what's your email?
JD at QMH101.com.
And your Facebook and Instagram are also at JD Doyle?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I don't use Instagram. I get tired of that.
We love Instagram,
that's
but
just pictures. There's no content there.
Well, we will make sure to link to your website. We'll include your email and your Facebook, because you are super active on Facebook, because I see lots of cool things. I'm like, what's JD going to post? It's great.
Yeah, I have what I call my Facebook history outreach that I do every day, 15 to 20 posts. They get 18 today. And it's all kinds of stuff. People love the vintage photographs of like a couple of guys from decades ago. Okay, I don't own those photographs, but I can collect them in a file here and recycle them every year. Facebook reminds me what I posted a year ago. So I said, oh, people have forgotten about this one. I'll post it again.
Oh, that's smart. We need to start doing that.
And I post clippings from the local gay publications. I might post an ad for a prominent bar, and that brings some response. Oh, I used to go there. Or
right.
I remember this drag performer. Or whatever. I try to do various parts of the culture. Whenever I finish reading a book, I'll probably write about the book. Like, here's this one, and here's why I liked it, and so forth, to draw attention to it, and different areas.
Well, you're super fast too. When I sent you that book a couple months ago to scan, you had that thing done in a second.
I'm fast, yeah.
You are. I couldn't believe how quick you said thank you and sent it back to me. I was like, that's nuts.
I'm focused. I just say I'm a worker bee.
Right. That's awesome.
I want it done and out of the way. I want to do something else. I don't want stuff to pile up. And I always got a list of projects I'm working on, like, oh, I've never covered this particular local social organization in Houston. And I got enough information. I should just do a page on them. So that's on my to-do. I Post-its along the bottom of my computer. This group and that group, and I want to do this. And it's okay. Pull that down. Let's work on that. I got a wild hair at my butt a couple weeks ago. Decided to do research on women arrested posing as men. And so I have newspapers.com as a subscription, which is great. So you can do searches that way. You can do masquerading as men, posing as men, and you can find quite a bit of stuff. And I pulled about 140 clippings from 1882 to 1955, where I stopped, and I put them in chronological order. And then I sort of analyzed them, like there were 5 reasons why women did this. Like, I'm going to ask you for 5. They did it to find work. They did it to live a freer life. They did it for same-sex relationships. They did it for crime. And the 5th one was they were found out about after they were dead. So you get that kind of data, and I put them all on a page. Here it is, folks. No, it's not related to Houston or Texas, but here it is. Enjoy your dope.
You inspire the rest of us to keep thinking differently about our work, which is really good.
Thank
you.
You.
We thank you. Yeah, your websites are great.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to say or want people to know about?
Dig into those attics and closets. Get that information to your local archivist so they can do something with it. I always say you don't have to necessarily give them the stuff, loan them the stuff. If it's publication, of course, they can digitize it and give it back to you. I've done that many times. Just last week, a guy from Austin sent me the entire run of a magazine he published covering Central Texas from 2004 to 2007.
Nice.
So I've already digitized them, and they're on my site, and I'm waiting. I asked him to write an introduction since he's still around, so I have that luxury of asking him to tell about his own magazine. So he's working on that. It was called Shout. It was better than a bar rag, not as good as a full publication. It wasn't Christopher Street, but it wasn't like a rag full of ads.
Right. Nice.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure that we link to everything like we said. Please go and snoop around the website. There's several ones. It's very user-friendly. You're going to find tons of stuff. You're going to get lost. I think you have a little picture on the side with a rabbit that says you'll get sucked down the rabbit hole, and it's very true.
Dude, it's funny.
Yeah, this is the time. People are asking us, what can I do? Where can I see things? This is one of the best places to go. So thank you so much for talking to us, and we'll see all of y'all next time on the next episode.
Very
Bye.
well. Thanks.